When a local newspaper shuts down, nothing dramatic happens at first. The streets look the same, the town still functions. But over time, people stop knowing what's happening to each other. Council decisions go unseen, small stories vanish, and a community quietly loses a shared sense of reality. Welcome back to Community by Design. I'm Jay Harrison. In this series, we've been exploring social infrastructure, the often invisible spaces and organizations that help us connect, trust, and participate in community life. So far, we've looked at libraries, public squares, and schools. Today, we're exploring something you might not immediately think of as social infrastructure: your local newspaper. The paper that tells you whose kids scored the winning goal, what happened at last night's council meeting, and which quiet issues might affect your daily life before you even know they matter. We'll head to Ayr in the township of North Dumfries, a rural community in Waterloo Region where the local newspaper still plays a central role in civic life. We'll hear from three people with different perspectives on local media: Mirko Petricevic, a veteran journalist and local media advocate; Irene Schmidt-Adeney, whose family has owned and operated the Ayr News for more than a century; and Sue Foxton, mayor of North Dumfries, who sees firsthand how local media shapes community decision-making. Here's what's at stake. Since 2008, more than 600 news outlets across Canada have closed or merged. Nearly 3/4 of them were community newspapers. So what happens when they disappear? What do communities lose when no one is consistently showing up to watch, ask questions, and tell local stories? And just as importantly, what can we do to keep that presence alive? Let's find out. Let's start by asking what local news means to a community. Mirko Petricevic spent 28 years at the Waterloo Region Record. He knows local journalism inside and out, and he's got a provocative idea. We need to stop thinking about newspapers as products and start thinking about them as infrastructure.
People have for a long time and traditionally seen news media as something to consume. A newspaper to buy, to subscribe to advertise in, whatever. But I think if we reframe that a little bit into, it is a community resource that's worth supporting and worth investing in, rather than a commodity just to buy off a shelf, the way that we would something that's imported from overseas or from down the 401.
Infrastructure works quietly. You don't think about it until it's gone. And when it disappears, the costs show up everywhere, in time, in money, and in trust.
I think robust local news media saves us time and money, both. If that argument about healthy democracy, if you don't buy that, or if that's not top of your list, I think pocketbook issues are top of many people's minds. How does it save time? Well, the easy example is, you don't have to spend 3 hours or 10 hours at a council meeting, at a local council meeting, to find out what's going on. You can spend 10 minutes on the online, or physical paper if you wish, or listening to a radio station the next day to find out what happens.
A good local paper is efficient. It casts an eye across the community so you don't have to, saving you time. But what about the money part? About 25 years ago, the city of Waterloo was planning the Rim Park Sports Complex. Maybe you've taken your kids to play hockey there, or watched a soccer game on those fields. It's become a beloved community space. But if you were in the region at the time it was being built, you may recall that the project was mired in scandal. The city thought it was spending $113 million on the project, but an investigation by the Waterloo Region Record, a local paper, revealed they were actually on the hook with their financer for more than double that, $227 million. This revelation spurred the city to action to renegotiate the contract.
Through negotiations, eventually it reduced the amount of the financing cost by 25 years ago, $82 million. Now it's $141.2. To make a long story short, the one record investigation saved every household in the city of Waterloo $3,000. Now, because this one investigation happened in Waterloo, municipalities across the province started looking at their financing arrangements with the same outfit. In Toronto, in Leamington, in Windsor, all sorts of contracts were renegotiated. This one investigation saved hundreds of millions of dollars for Ontario taxpayers.
That's real money that stayed in people's pockets. Now let's zoom in from the regional level to Ayr, a small community in North Dumfries Township. The population is about 5,300, though it's grown significantly in the last 10 years. The Ayr News has been serving this community since 1913. That's over 112 years of continuous publication through 2 world wars, the Great Depression, countless economic ups and downs, and it's still family-owned. Irene Schmidt-Adeney's grandfather bought the paper in 1913, just 1 year before World War I broke out. She's come back to work there 3 times over her career, most recently for the past 13 years.
I like to think of our newspaper as a common thread. So we're the one thing that has been tying people together for over 100 years. There is multiple Facebook pages for the village. Multiple points of view come out. But we have a social responsibility for what we report. And I always hope that people know that when they look in the newspaper, that the facts are checked and the story is true.
In a fragmented media landscape where everyone gets their news from different sources, different social media feeds, and different algorithmic bubbles, a local newspaper can create a trustworthy shared reality.
If they want to know what's happening in their community, if they want to know what's happening at the library, especially at council, I cover 3 councils in person, and I keep tabs on 2 more. So 5 different councils that we report on. So I look at us as being the tie that binds. We're the cohesive element. You might be able to check the library for something happening in one area. You might be able to check the community complex for something happening in another area. You might be able to check the school. But the Ayr News is the one that reports on all of those in one spot.
A single source for local news also sheds light on things you didn't know were happening. The cricket club starting up, the new aggregate pit proposal, or the family down the street struggling with their taxes. Sue Foxton is the mayor of North Dumfries and a regional councillor. She reads the Ayr News every week, and for her, it's personal.
Because it is us. It's about our community. It's about our neighbor, our friends, it's about the life in a community. You can't get that anywhere else. Other papers are dealing with the world or certain topics, or there's a certain type of paper that only prints on certain things. This gives you community. And it really is the heart of the community. So I have to tell you, when we first moved to Ayr, it must have been a slow news week because we made the front page of the Ayr News. So your kids will be in there. The school events are in there. There's pictures of everything. So you hunt every time to see, what picture, who's in this week. And it's great. It is a really community newspaper.
There's something special about seeing yourself or your kids or your neighbors reflected back to you in print. It says, you matter. Your community sees you. You belong here. But local media does more than just make us feel connected. It actually shapes how we connect and how we disagree. In contrast to social media, local journalism makes space for a different quality of community debate. Mirko pointed to a story the Record ran about a woman in her 80s who was upset because her home had been designated a heritage site by the city. Had it been posted to social media, it surely would have sparked outrage. But because it was a news story, not just a Facebook post, it included context.
The representative from the city can explain, okay, this was the process. It was a long process. We've contacted her in the past. There are grants available for helping maintain that historical restorations that are required from time to time. To have that counterbalance is, I think, necessary, especially in the media environment that we have now. That's fairly fragmented and designed to be polarizing, designed to be confrontational.
The social media algorithms reward anger and outrage. They push us into camps, into tribes. Local journalism, at its best, does the opposite. It slows us down, it adds context, it gives more people a chance to speak. So that's the foundation, local media as social infrastructure. It can save us time and money. It connects us to our neighbors and our civic institutions. It creates a shared reality and tempers polarization. But all of that only matters if local media can actually hold power accountable. Can it shine a light where people don't want light to shine? That's where we're headed next. We've already heard about the Rim Park investigation, how one newspaper investigation uncovered a financing scandal that saved taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars. In 2018, the Waterloo Region Record was a finalist for the Michener Awards, basically Canada's premier award for public service journalism. The series that earned them that recognition was called Rubber Town.
It had to do with people that had worked in the rubber industry and got ill, cancer, passed away. Their families had claims with WSIB, and many of them were turned down. And because of this investigation, the WSIB reopened 300 cases. I mean, a lot of these families were left in financial straits. I'm not sure how many were overturned or accepted, or whatever, but some were. And so this is another example of how one media outlet acted as a community resource.
As a result of this investigation, some families finally got the support they deserved. In some cases, years or decades after their loved ones had died from work-related illnesses. Local news gives people in the community more avenues to hold power accountable, including the power of the media itself. Irene Schmidt-Adeney, a writer and owner at the Air News, attends council meetings in person to bring the business of local government into people's homes, as well as a regular editorial column. And readers show up to hold her accountable.
I write a column every week, an editorial, and our editor is very good at differentiating between the news story, which is just the facts, and my editorial, which is my opinion. Sometimes people have, pushed back, but you know what? I love getting letters to the editor back about something I've written. I thought, good or bad, it tells me people are reading it and people are thinking about it.
People are thinking about it. That's civic engagement. And because Irene is not hidden away in some distant newsroom, but can be found at her office right in the center of town, she is accessible to the people who want to be engaged in the civic conversations she is starting.
You can't walk in the front door of most major newspapers and, number one, they don't have a front door. We do. And I'm right here. So anything I write, you can come and talk to me about it right to my face.
For Mayor Sue Foxton, that relationship with local media is essential to how she does her job.
We have the Air News, and so I have a really close relationship with them. So any reports I get that I think should be newsworthy to the public, I forward them right to her. For instance, Waterloo Regional Police Services, they know that I hand all the records that they send me because they give me updates almost weekly, and I send them right off to them so that they can publish them so the public knows what's happening. Throughout all our meetings, they record what happens at the meetings. Not just our meeting, they do Brant, they do all the other townships as well, so that we know what's going on.
Most residents aren't going to show up to a council meeting on a Tuesday night. They've got kids to put to bed, jobs to work, lives to live. But somebody needs to be there to listen and ask questions.
It gives you news in advance, like there's going to be a council about a new aggregate pit next Monday night. You come on out, let's talk about it, and things like that. They really are the heart of the community.
That participatory function is especially important in municipalities, including rural and township communities, where government decisions affect daily life in immediate, tangible ways. Road maintenance, development proposals, water quality, these aren't abstract policy debates. They're about your property values, your kids' school bus routes, the view from your kitchen window. But in an age of social media where anyone can post anything, do we really need professional journalists? Can't social media groups and community pages do the same thing? Irene doesn't think so.
I do lament around the coffee pot that with media law and with the CRTC, Canadian Radio and Television Communications, there is media law. We do have to abide by it as a newspaper. There's no media law on social media.
Which means no accountability, no fact-checking requirements, no consequences for spreading misinformation. In an era of alternative facts and competing realities, having institutions dedicated to finding and reporting the truth, imperfectly but earnestly, is a precious thing.
They're the diggers of the truth, and in this society, it's hard to get the truth today. They're so essential.
In a world where propaganda and misinformation flow freely, where foreign actors and domestic partisans alike try to manipulate what we see and believe, local journalists are boots on the ground, eyes on the scene, asking, what actually happened here? We've established that local media matters. It holds power accountable. It creates space for civic participation. It pursues truth in an age of misinformation. Here's the uncomfortable reality. It's dying. Since 2008, more than 600 news outlets have closed or merged in Canada. Newsrooms that once had 100 journalists now have a dozen. Communities that had multiple papers now have none. What's threatening local media? And what happens if it disappears? Let's talk about the crisis. As of October 1st, 2025, 603 news outlets have either closed or merged, and 73%, nearly 3/4, were community newspapers. The kind that covered high school football games and town hall meetings and local business openings. When a newspaper closes, you don't just lose a source of information, you lose something more fundamental.
We have our community groups and everything else, and that's really great, but the newspaper ties it all together. It does. So you can go and you can see your child playing a sports, and you can see what's going on at the library, and you can see what happened at council that week or at regional council that week. And so you get to see it all. It ties it together, so it creates a stronger community. So although it won't destroy the community because we're small towns and we pull together, it will weaken it.
In what ways would you imagine?
Because you will not be as knowledgeable. So you go to, let's say that you belong to the Horticulture Society, and your son or daughter play hockey or ringette or whatever, and your senior parents go to the seniors club. So you know what's going on there. But you don't know what's going on with the new group that wants to start a cricket club, and you don't know what's going on with those who are having a hard time with their taxes. You're not aware. It ties it all together.
You don't know what you don't know, and that creates isolation. Not the kind where you're physically alone, but the kind where you exist in your own bubble, disconnected from the broader life of your community.
People wouldn't know each other as much. People wouldn't know what's going on, so you feel left out then. You know, if somebody says, I didn't know that was going on. I would have got it. So you start to feel left out. So it breaks down connections.
So why is this happening? Why are newspapers dying? The easy answer is the internet. Advertising revenue that used to go to newspapers now goes to Google and Facebook. Classified ads move to Craigslist and Kijiji. People get their news for free online, so why pay for a subscription? But there's more to it than that. Irene Schmidt-Adeney points to a more immediate threat for the air news: Canada Post. The recent strikes and the broader unreliability of mail delivery create an existential problem for the newspapers that rely on subscriptions to delivery. Even while delivery was halted due to postal disruptions, the paper's delivery bill kept coming. And they kept publishing, even when it cost them money, because they knew their community needed them.
It's always seemed ironic to me that if you have a car and you took the car to the garage and it doesn't work, you can go back to the mechanic and get him to fix it, and you don't have to pay for it. Well, we have to pay for Canada Post every week that our paper was not delivered. So there was 3 weeks worth of papers piling up.
Now add this. Following a recent Canada Post strike, the provincial government is considering a policy change that would allow government agencies to stop publishing legal notices in newspapers. Those notices, while boring to most readers, are a crucial revenue stream for small papers.
So it just seemed to me pretty bad that the provincial government recognized that Canada Post is the nail in the coffin for any newspapers that have subscribers, because we rely on Canada Post to get our paper out.
So you have newspapers struggling with declining revenue, unreliable delivery, and now the potential loss of a guaranteed income stream. How does a local newspaper survive in a context like that? The Air News has survived because it's family-owned. because the people who run it are rooted in the community and because they're willing to make less money to keep it going.
You have to be here because you love your job, because you're not going to be rich working at the Air News. But on the other hand, I have a 5-minute walk to get home. I worked in Toronto for 15 years, commuting from Air. So when I had my chance to come back, I willingly gave it up, knowing that, I'm giving up benefits, pension, to walk down the street and come to my job and to get to know the people that I'd lost touch with because I sold my soul to work in Toronto.
The big city has a lot to offer, but it does not include the chance to serve your own community, to walk down the street and know the people you write about. As a family-owned business, the decision-making hierarchy is flattened. They're not a corporate chain answering to shareholders in Toronto or New York, just people trying to serve their community and pay their bills. But even with all these challenges, there's a sense of hope, or at least determination, in the people we talk to. Mirko Petricevic didn't disappear after he retired from journalism. He started a grassroots advocacy group for local media.
I've been retired for a couple of years, but dedicating myself to a grassroots advocacy group called Ink-stigator wretches. Now, Ink-stigator wretches is an old pejorative term, mostly for print media, print journalists. So it's a grassroots advocacy group. We're all volunteers.
They started in 2020 during the pandemic lockdowns with a simple goal: get municipal councils to publicly voice support for local journalism.
We drafted a motion and asked the regional council to pass a motion just voicing support for professional journalism and to advocate with other levels of government to help create policies and regulations to support a healthy local news ecosystem. And long story short, in 2 years, we had, it started in Waterloo Region, the regional council passed it first. Eventually, all the local councils passed this similar motion. And within 2 years, we had from St. John's to Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, Edmonton, Winnipeg. We had 29 municipalities pass a similar motion, and they're home to more than 11 million people.
Now, motions and proclamations don't pay the bills, but they do something important. They signal that local media matters. They create political cover for more substantive support down the line. The group's main ongoing campaign is about raising awareness. Every year, May 3rd is UN World Press Freedom Day. Most people, including most journalists, don't even know it exists. Ink-stigator wretches coordinates volunteers across Canada and now internationally to ask municipalities to recognize the day, light up City Hall in blue, issue a proclamation, raise a UN flag.
But in 2025, we had probably about 50. And stretching from West Perth, Australia, we had about 5 or 6 bridges lit for World Press Freedom Day. We had another couple, 4 or 5 bridges and other signs and assets on the east coast of Australia. Mostly in Canada, we had the CN Tower lit for the second year. Niagara Falls for the second year in 2025 was lit for World Press Freedom Day. And this in 2025, we had our first participant in Europe, in Geneva, Switzerland. They have a huge mega fountain that's 140 meters tall. It's a jet of water. And it was lit for blue, a UN color, for World Press Freedom Day. We're trying to build a culture of appreciation for quality journalism because it is a community resource.
A culture of appreciation for local journalism means we are not just consuming news, but valuing it, supporting it, understanding that it costs money and takes time and requires skilled professionals. So what can be done to foster this culture of appreciation for the local media that forms part of our community's social infrastructure? Mirko has some concrete suggestions.
I think it comes down to funding. It comes down to funding, whether it's individual subscriptions. If you can't afford an individual subscription, you can read through a press reader at the local library. But local businesses, they can advertise, right? Municipalities can advertise. I'd love to see local municipalities, even though they're already obligated to publish certain things, certain notices in the local news outlets. I'd like to see them ramp that up to, again, minimum 25%. That would really help the local news outlets.
25% of municipal marketing budgets to local media. That's a policy proposal, one that some Ontario Crown corporations have already adopted. But there are simpler things too.
But if you don't have finances, you can easily support them by, if you see something advertised around your local news media outlet, when you go to buy something, say, hey, I saw your ad in the paper or whatever. To the managers, say, look, I saw this there. That reinforces that, okay, this is working for them.
Just saying, I saw your ad reinforces to businesses that local advertising works. It's such a small thing that can make a difference. And here's one more.
Being critical of local news media is fair game. But be careful about the way that you criticize. And is your criticism valid? I mean, it's often, I hate to use the F word, but, fake news, right? People will come out as a joke, say, oh, that's fake news, and that's it, without doing the investigation to find out whether it is actually inaccurate.
It sounds simple, but in an age of reflexive distrust, where fake news is a catch-all dismissal, it's actually a radical ask. Assume good faith. Engage in good faith. I want to end with a story. It's small, but it captures something essential about why local media matters. A few weeks before we recorded this interview, Irene wrote a story about Ken Dryden, the famous NHL goalie who passed away in September of 2025. Most people know him as a hockey legend, but Irene knew something else. His family had emigrated from Scotland to North Dumfries 150 years ago.
I got out their 600-page history book, which is not digitized. And I had my sticky notes, and it took a couple weeks to write the story. So I talked about reasons that the family had come from Scotland, and it was my perception of why I thought they came from Scotland, and it was a little bit of persecution.
She researched, she fact-checked, she wrote the story, and then something remarkable happened.
I had an email this afternoon at 2:30 from Ken Dryden's sister. She lives in British Columbia. She lives in Victoria, BC. And someone she knows gets the Air News and sent it to her out in Victoria, BC, the story about her brother and about the Dryden family. And she said, what a lovely tribute. I was amazed at the depth of your information. She said there was information that you filled in a lot of gaps in our family. And I thought, yay. So then she asked to get a copy of the article, which is good. But I thought, you know what? This is a perfect example of why we do what we do. Because we've been here for over 100 years, we have all the archives. We have the information. So sometimes we can help a family, even Ken Dryden's family, fill in the gaps. Keeps me going for another week.
That's the thing about local journalism. On Tuesday, you're covering a contentious council meeting and getting angry emails. On Wednesday, you're writing about a high school basketball game. On Thursday, you're explaining a complicated regional budget. On Friday, you're researching someone's family history. And occasionally, you get an email from someone saying, thank you. You helped me. You connected me to my past, my community, my neighbor. Local media is social infrastructure. It connects us. It informs us. It holds power accountable. It creates a shared reality in a fragmenting world. And it's fragile. With 603 news outlets gone since 2008 and more closing every year. So what do? We subscribe, we advertise. We say, I saw your ad in the paper. We engage thoughtfully, critically, and in good faith. And we remember what Mirko said.
The biggest takeaway that I'd love for your listeners to take away from at least this portion of the conversation is to reframe their thinking about local news media and see it as a community resource rather than a commodity to consume.
A community resource, like water pipes, roads, libraries. Essential, worth protecting, worth investing in. Social infrastructure isn't just about buildings and spaces. It's about the invisible threads that weave a community together. The systems and institutions that help us see each other, understand each other, engage with each other. Local media is one of those threads. And when it breaks, we all feel a little more isolated, a little more disconnected, a little more vulnerable to forces that would prefer we stay that way. If you want to learn more about ink-stained wretches and their advocacy work, you can visit their website. We'll have a link to it in the show notes. Thanks for listening to Community by Design. Thanks to our guests on today's show, Mirko Petricevic, Irene Schmidt-Adeney, and Sue Foxton. Coming up next time on our final episode in this series, we explore the social infrastructure of neighborhoods and look toward the future of social infrastructure in Waterloo Region. You can enjoy all episodes of this show by visiting midtownradio.ca or downloading the Midtown Radio app. Community by Design is produced by me, Jay Harrison. The writing team is myself and Karyn Atkins, and the editing team is Deren Atkins, Srijit Ramaswamy, and me. The music in today's show was from Rocket Jr., Par Hagstrom, and Loyer, courtesy of Epidemic Sound. Our executive producer is David Harms. This show was made possible by the support of the Waterloo Region Community Foundation and listeners like you. Visit midtownradio.ca to hear more local programming and find out how you can contribute to uplifting local musicians and community voices.